The most dangerous financial trap isn't debt. It's the illusion that the next raise will finally make you free. Because if earning more money actually solved the problem, most professionals would feel rich by now. They don't. They feel busy, they feel responsible, they feel slightly behind, and every year their income goes up, but so does everything else. Most people think being broke is a money problem. They blame income, inflation, or bad luck. That explanation is comforting. It suggests that one better opportunity will fix everything. But if that were true, people with steady careers would gradually feel freer as the years go by. Instead, what happens is the opposite. They earn more, spend more, and feel just as stuck as before. If that sounds familiar, it is not a coincidence. It is a system. Most Americans live inside a routine that feels productive, but rarely feels relieving. You wake up early, check your bank app, calculate what is due this week, and then head into a day that is already sold before it starts. Rent, car payment, insurance, subscriptions, groceries. By the time the paycheck lands, most of it already has a destination. Nothing catastrophic happened, nothing irresponsible was done, yet the margin never appears. That quiet pressure is what the trap feels like from the inside. Not dramatic failure, just permanent maintenance. There is a short animated film called Happiness by Steve Cutts that shows people moving through life like animals in a feeding loop. They chase rewards, upgrades, and approval while never questioning the structure around them. It looks exaggerated until you notice how closely it mirrors modern careers. Work, pay, upgrade, repeat. That cycle feels normal because everyone around you is doing it, but normal does not mean harmless. Today, I want to show you why the salary trap exists, why it quietly keeps people financially stuck for decades, what actually loosens its grip. A salary feels like stability because it is predictable. You know when it arrives, you know roughly how much it will be, and you can plan around it. Predictability feels like progress, even when nothing else is improving. This is why many people interpret income increases as evidence that their situation is improving, even if their savings, investments, and options remain unchanged. The paycheck becomes proof that life is moving forward. But the problem is that a salary does not automatically create freedom. It creates maintenance. As long as your lifestyle depends on uninterrupted paychecks, your financial system is fragile. You're not building independence, you are sustaining continuity. This is the quiet shift that most people never notice. Salary and income start as tools, but over time, they turn into obligations. And the moment they become obligations, your leverage shrinks. That's where the trap begins. A good way to see this is to ask a simple question. If your paycheck stopped for 3 months, would your life pause or would it collapse? For most people, the answer is immediate. That tells you whether your salary is supporting you or controlling you. Stability is useful, but dependence is expensive. Once you rely on constant income to preserve your current lifestyle, every decision starts orbiting around protecting that flow. Recent data shows that about 37% of Americans don't even have $400 set aside for an emergency. That is not a small fringe group. That is millions of households living without a cushion. When there is no cushion, every bill feels urgent and every paycheck feels necessary. At that point, the salary stops being income and starts being oxygen. If the first illusion is safety, the second illusion is progress, and that leads directly to the next part of the cycle. When income rises, expenses usually follow, not because people are irresponsible, but because comfort expands to fill available resources. A slightly better apartment, a car that feels more reliable, meals that feel more deserved after long workdays. None of these decisions feel reckless. They feel reasonable. The issue is not the individual choices. The issue is the pattern. You can see this clearly in a simple scenario. Someone gets a 10% raise and immediately upgrades their apartment because it finally feels affordable. 6 months later, the new rent feels normal, the raise feels invisible, and the pressure is exactly where it started. The numbers changed, but the position did not. This is how progress can look real while functionally doing nothing. Money doesn't just disappear, you spend it. That's not judgment. That's accounting. When spending grows alongside income, your financial position doesn't really change. The only difference is that your cost of living becomes harder to sustain. What used to be optional starts to feel necessary, and once necessity rises, your ability to walk away from situations declines. You're earning more, but your dependence has increased. That's how raises can actually tighten the trap instead of loosening it. One practical way to fight this pattern is to deliberately live a couple of years in the past financially. When your income rises, you keep your expenses anchored to your old lifestyle for a while. The extra margin goes towards savings, investments, or debt reduction instead of immediate upgrades. It feels conservative in the moment, but it quietly builds breathing room. That breathing room is what eventually creates freedom. This is the point where people start to feel stuck, but they usually blame the wrong factor. They blame the job, the economy, or timing. The deeper issue is structural, and it becomes clearer when you look at how salary income actually works. A salary is ultimately an exchange of time for money. You can negotiate a higher rate, but the structure remains the same. If you stop working, the income stops. That creates a ceiling that effort alone cannot break. Wealth, on the other hand, comes from assets that generate value without your constant presence. Investments, ownership stakes, and systems continue producing whether you're working that day or not. This idea is not new. It appears in classic books like The Millionaire Next Door, which showed that many financially independent people live below their means and invest steadily instead of chasing visible status. Their strategy is not exciting. It is consistent. The reason it works is that assets multiply effort, while salaries only reward effort. Once you see that distinction, another uncomfortable truth appears. The system around you is not designed to push you toward independence. It is designed to reward reliability. Workplaces reward people who show up, follow process, and deliver predictable results. Those are valuable traits, but they do not necessarily create freedom. The incentives are built for stability, not autonomy. If you perform well, you are encouraged to stay. If you struggle, you are encouraged to improve. In both cases, the assumption is that the system continues. This is why the salary trap is not just personal behavior. It is structural reinforcement. The environment around you rewards continuation and discourages disruption. The longer you stay in that loop, the more your lifestyle and identity adapt to it. Eventually, the idea of stepping outside it feels risky, even if staying inside it quietly drains your options. You do not notice this shift in one dramatic moment. It happens gradually. The job becomes familiar. The income becomes necessary, and the idea of changing direction starts to feel irresponsible instead of strategic. That is how a system maintains itself, not through force, but through comfort. Recognizing the structure is useful, but awareness alone does not change outcomes. The real question is, what actually loosens the trap once you see it? At some point, you have to turn the vicious cycle into a virtuous one. One good financial habit tends to lead to another. Saving consistently makes investing easier. Investing regularly makes spending more deliberate. Those become what behavioral economists call keystone habits. Small shifts that trigger larger patterns of stability. Change rarely starts with a dramatic move. It starts with a habit that nudges the system in a better direction. What actually gets you out? The first shift is mental. You stop treating your salary as the solution and start treating it as fuel. Your paycheck isn't the destination, it's the resource that funds your exit. When part of that income consistently goes toward assets instead of consumption, the relationship changes. You're no longer just maintaining your lifestyle, you're building leverage. The second shift is resisting automatic upgrades. Every time your income rises, widening the gap between what you earn and what you need creates optionality. And optionality is what allows you to make decisions based on strategy instead of urgency. Comfort purchased too early usually costs freedom later. That's not dramatic. It's arithmetic. The third shift is consistency. Investing regularly, even in small amounts, gradually reduces how dependent you are on the next paycheck. It does not feel exciting at first. That is exactly why it works. Do the boring stuff. It works. Most people look for a breakthrough moment when their finances suddenly change direction. In reality, the exit from the trap usually looks quiet and gradual. Growing emergency fund, a steady investment habit, a lifestyle that costs less than your earning power. None of these things feel impressive in isolation. Together, they create leverage, and leverage is what slowly turns a paycheck from survival into strategy. You don't escape the salary trap with motivation or a bigger paycheck alone. You escape it when your life stops depending entirely on the next paycheck. The moment your income becomes a tool instead of a lifeline, your decisions change, your leverage grows. The system that once felt controlling becomes something you can navigate deliberately. If this makes sense, here's your next step. Build a financial buffer that gives you room when life gets unpredictable. That's exactly what the next video covers. Click now, watch, and apply one idea this week. Do the boring stuff, it works.